This is Father Dominic Holtz coming to you from Rome, Italy, with a word of hope for the solemnity of Christ the King. How do we understand the kingship of Christ? Christ tells us, and he tells Pilate, that his kingdom is not of this world. Now, we might be tempted to think two ways about that kingdom. We might take that to mean that God is sovereign, and therefore all of God's rules trump everything about this life, and that's true, and therefore we should, by force or any other means, submit everything to the church, so that all may be submitted to Christ who is King forever. That has occasionally in the past been a temptation. I don't suppose it's a strong temptation for us now. But there is another temptation, and that's the temptation to say, well, Christ, when he ascended and is seated at the right hand of the Father, is now sovereign King of the universe. So there's nothing we need to do about it. He's king, we can't escape his rule. Whether we are willing subjects or subjects of his iron rod, we are serving Christ the King. So we can go about our lives, honoring Christ the King in our heart, and move on, not caring one bit that he is king. The church teaches us otherwise. The church reminds us that to honor God, to worship according to the one and true faith, is an obligation for all people, not just for those who know Christ. And if it's an obligation for all people, they need to know Christ. They need to know that Christ is King. Well, how do they do that? Well, in part, it then becomes the obligation for those of us who know the kingship of Christ, who know his victory, his ascension, and his sitting at the right hand of the Father, to worship him well, to worship him in spirit and in truth. It falls to us in our ordinary activities to submit all of them to the rule of Christ. If we own businesses, it means treating those who work for us in a way that those who are servants of Christ ought to treat our workers. If it means we have authority over anyone, it means exercising that authority in accord with the rule of Christ. If we live in a democratic community, it means using our votes to help change our society, to make it a place where the gospel that we have come to know has had an impact on our society, on the laws, the way we treat one another. And while it doesn't mean forcing anyone to accept the Christian faith, it does mean paving the way for the Christian faith to be lived well. And most of all, to serve Christ is to proclaim the gospel, to let other people know, not just indirectly by our voting or by the way we run our businesses, but directly through our proclamation of the good news of Christ, that he is King of the universe. That is how we draw people to come to know the truth of the one true faith and worship of the one true God. And that, my brothers and sisters, is indeed a word of hope.